Hey, it's me, Samin again, and today we are going to learn about the HTTP protocol. So let's not waste any time, and I will try to provide you with all the knowledge you need about the HTTP protocol. So make sure you watch till the end. So first, what is HTTP? So it's basically called Hypertext Transfer Protocol. HTTP is the protocol that enables the transfer of data over the internet. So HTTP is basically used for communicating with web servers for the transmitting of web pages, data like HTML, image, videos, etc. So now let's look at what is HTTPS. So basically HTTPS is the secure version of HTTP. Its full form is Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure. HTTPS data is basically encrypted, so it's not only stops people from seeing the data you are receiving and sending, it also gives you assurance that you are talking to the right web server, correct web server. So now let's talk about next I will talk about why you should learn HTTP protocol. So this is very important because we should not just blindly learn anything. First we should know why we are learning it. So let's look. So the first point here is identifying vulnerabilities. So understanding HTTP is crucial for web applications, as many security issues are related to the way data is exchanged over HTTP. So the second one is request manipulation. Ethical hackers often manipulate HTTP requests to test for vulnerabilities like SQL, XSS, etc. And they also assess how an application handles different inputs. So you need to know about HTTP to do all these things. And the third thing is response analysis. So analyzing HTTP response helps uncover sensitive information, error messages, and potential vulnerabilities, providing insights to an application's security posture. So the fourth one is session management. So knowledge of HTTP cookies and session management is essential for testing authentication and authorization controls of identifies session related vulnerabilities. And the fifth one is exploitation techniques. So ethical hackers use HTTP to demonstrate the exploitation of vulnerabilities like cross-site scripting and CSRF and open redirects to show real world impact of these issues. And the last one is effective communication. So proficiency in HTTP enables you to clearly explain your vulnerabilities and their implications to developers and stakeholders. So there are many other reasons you should learn HTTP. I will talk about them on other videos, but so you have got an idea that learning HTTP is very important for your career to become a web application penetration tester. So next I will talk about the HTTP request response cycle. So communication in HTTP centers around a concept called request response cycle. So I've talked about this topic in a detailed way in one of my videos. I will provide the link in description. So now I'm going to give you the overview of the topic. So basically it's a core interaction between a client and server over HTTP protocol. So first the client initiates the request, composing them with methods, URL, headers, and optional bodies. Then the server processes the request, generates a response with status codes, header, and content. And then the client receives and processes the response, renders the web page or handles the data, and it completes the cycle. So it was a basic overview of the request response cycle. So now let's talk about URL in short. So URL basically means uniform resource locator. So it basically gives instruction how to access a resource on the internet. So you need to tell the browser how and where to access resources. This is where the URL helps. So here you can see a URL. It's divided into various parts. So this is how a URL basically looks like, and these are the various parts of it. So I will give you an overview of these parts. So this one scheme, it basically instructs what protocol to use, like HTTP, HTTPS, FTP, etc. So here we can see it's using HTTPS protocol. And in the user section, in this URL no user is specified, but it basically is used when the service requires authentication like login, username, or passwords, etc. So the next one is host. It basically means that the domain or IP of the server you wish to access. So here the example, we can see it's trying to access www.example.com, and the port number is 8080 here, and the some common ports are like 80 basically means HTTP, and 443 means HTTPS, and by 8080 basically means web servers. So next we can see path, and this basically means the file name or the location of the file resource you are trying to access. And next we can see query string. So this is basically the extra bits of information that can be sent to the request path. And the last one is a fragment, and this basically is a reference to a location on the actual page requested. So this was all about a URL, a short overview. So now let's talk about HTTP request. It contains important information about the request. So I will explain this request now. So in the first line, this is the request line. It specifies the HTTP method, which is here get. It can be anything like a get, post, put, etc. Depends on the request you are making to the server. So the next one, the index.html basically means the path of the resource, and the http/1.1 means that the version of HTTP you are using. So next you can see host equals to www.example.com. So this is basically the domain name of the server to which the request is being sent. Next we can see user agent Mozilla/5.0 Windows. So this basically means that it identifies the client making the request. In this case, it indicates the request is coming from a Windows-based Mozilla browser. And the fourth one we can see is accept and text HTML, XHTML, XML, etc. So this is basically accept header in which identifies the content that the client can handle. So next we can see the accept language ENUS. So this basically indicates the preferred language for the response. And the last one is connection keep alive. It basically is connection header, which means the type of connection being used. So next I will talk, let's see HTTP response. This is basically a common HTTP response. Here we can see HTTP 1.1200 okay. So this is the HTTP version, and this is the status code we talked about earlier. We'll talk about it in detail in the later slide, so don't worry. So this is basically meaning that the request was successful. Next we can see the date and the time when the response was generated. In the third line we can see it identifies the web server's software and version. Here it's Apache/2.4.41 and it's Unix. And in the next line we can see content length. It basically indicates the length of response body in bytes. And in this line we can see the content type. It basically is the media type or the character encoding. And in the next few lines we can see the HTML contents. So now I will talk about the HTTP methods. So here we can see HTTP get method. So the get method is basically used for retrieving data or read-only operations. So in this code snippet we can see that it retrieves info about a product which has the ID of 123 from the server. So next I will talk about the post method. So the post method is basically used to create resources or data submissions. When you are submitting a form or uploading a file, it goes as a post request. So here we can see that the post request is used to create a new order for the product 456, and it has requested 2 units. So next I will talk about the put method. So the put method is basically used when we update resources. So here it updates the info of 789. We can see it updates the name and the price of the product of 789. And the next HTTP method I'm talking about is delete. So this basically does what it says, it deletes resources. So these were some common HTTP methods. There are others also like trace, etc. So if you want to learn the HTTP methods in more details, I will link some valuable websites where you can learn them more in depth. I'm just talking about the things which are very important. So now I'm going to talk about status codes. We can find these in our responses. So we can see that in the range of 100 to 199 it is saying that it's information response. So these are not very common status codes. These were used to tell the client their first part of request is accepted and they should continue sending. So in the next one so this 200 to 299 basically means that the request was successful. So in 300 to 399 it's saying redirection. So this basically redirects to a different web page or different website. Basically this redirects clients to another resource. So in the next one 400 to 499 we can see it's saying client errors. So it basically used to inform client that there was an error with the request. And in 500 to 599 it's saying the server errors. So major problems with server, it basically means that there are major problems with the server when handling the request. So next I'm going to talk about common HTTP status codes. So let's get an overview of every one that's mentioned here. So as you can see, 200 status code basically means the request was successful. 201 basically means the resource was created. It is basically used when a new user is created or a blog is posted. And 301 basically means moved permanently. It means the page has been moved somewhere else. And next we can see 302 found. It basically means a resource requested has been temporarily moved to the URL given by location header. If you don't understand, I'm going to explain header later, don't worry. So 400 bed request basically tells something was wrong or missing. So in 401 not authorized, it basically means that you're not allowed to view resources. You must need a username or password. So 403 forbidden basically means you don't have permission to view the resources. 405 method not allowed basically means that we have sent the wrong method request. 404 page not found means that the page it doesn't exist. And 500 internal service error basically is a server error. And 503 service unavailable basically shows the overload or maintenance. So now we'll talk about headers. So headers are additional bits of data you can send to the web servers when making requests. So this is a common request header example. So I've explained all of this meaning before in a slide. So the new one here is cookie. It contains previously set cookies sent by server including session and user preference info. So now let's look at common response header example. So as the previous slide, I've talked about most of these except two. So the first one is cache control. It indicates the response cache for a maximum of 3600 seconds and it is public. And the next one is set cookie. So it basically sets a cookie named a session ID with a value of 789, also tells the cookie expiration date and also tells the path. So now I will talk about cookies, talk about some common cookies. So the first one is a session cookie. So this one is basically used to maintain a user's session during a single visit. And the next one you can see is persistent cookie. It basically stores user preferences or login status across multiple visits. And the next cookie we're talking about is authentication cookie. So this cookie basically validates and authorizes users during login sessions. And the last one I'm going to talk about is tracking cookie. So this basically collects user data for analytics and advertising purposes. There are many cookies besides these four I've mentioned. So if you want to know about them in details, I will mention some useful websites you can learn from there. So if you guys have any questions and comments, do let me know. So this was all from me today. I hope you found it useful. Till then, keep liking my videos and subscribe to my channel. If you guys want me to cover any topic, do let me know. So thank you.